Welcome to the Doc and Pro Show. I'm Dr. Mark Kovacs, and this is my good mate, Jason Bone. We're here again with the legend, Gil Reyes. Really excited to get in the mind of one of the best strength coaches and one of the best people out there. Gil, thanks again for being here. The first section that we discussed was phenomenal, and would love to talk a little bit about, you get such a phenomenal group of people that come through your gym. Do you have some stories that you could be willing to share about some of the discussions that have happened in the gym itself?
If there's such a thing as a fly on the wall, I am the fly on the wall in this gym, because I get to see and listen to and learn from truly great athletes, great individuals. And yes, one of the most amazing moments in my life, and Dr. Kovacs, you've been in here once when you met this gentleman about whom I will share this brief little anecdote. But I'm in here, and next thing I know, I'm in the presence of greatness, great athletes, great achievements. And so Mike Tyson comes in here, and Mike Tyson has graced our premises here, and his presence truly is he's come in here before when I've had athletes, some professional and college athletes in here training. And needless to say, when Mike Tyson walks in the door, everything seems to kind of lock down, and everyone pays, rightfully so, attention to him, any thoughts he might have, what he might have to say. And so he's been in here. And if you can imagine me having an opportunity, literally once in a lifetime, of being in here when Steffi Graf and Andre Agassi and Mike Tyson are in the same room at one time. And to listen to Mike, not just Mike Tyson, but here, obviously Steffi Graf, obviously Andre Agassi, discuss commitment, effort, sacrifice, and how you get to where you are. And of course, Mike Tyson was telling us his stories as a youth of his commitment, what kind of got him to where he was going. And he tells us, of course, of him growing up in upstate New York and waking up at 4 a.m. every morning to go do his training. And I just remember Andre just looking at him with such awe, as was I, when he was discussing the sacrifice. But then Mike Tyson took that word one step a little further. He said, well, it's not just sacrifice, it's suffering. Can you suffer? Some sacrifices actually come without that much, when you think about it, with that much give. You can sacrifice something, not that much, not that big a give. But if your sacrifice entails suffering for your cause, for your commitment, for your quest, yeah, you can weigh that in there. You can weigh that in there as impact and the dynamics of your trajectory, your journey. And so we get to listen to that. And he talks about what he did, how hard he had to work to go through it. It's amazing when you look at him now, because even now, he's an incredible physical specimen right now, incredible. But then you see how he developed himself, what he had to do. But everything comes back with him as obviously one of the greatest champions that's ever roamed the earth. You see that he means it. You see that he means it, that it was the suffering that he overcame. Sacrifice is not a big enough word. It was suffering. And that has always stayed with me, because we can actually make some sacrifices that are a little easier, let's say, and still be defined as sacrifices. No, how deep are you willing to dig inside of here? And that's one of the stories, like I said, when I'm in here, then to listen to Steffi Graf talk about her journey. And then, of course, Andre, being so familiar with Andre, since I had the privilege of riding alongside of him for his journey, you really understand the word sacrifice and suffering. And no one brings it upon themselves, intentionally anyway, the suffering. It's just, you have to be pretty special, not just to endure it, but to conquer it. You have to get past it. Somehow or other, you have to get past that suffering, not just endure it. And the great ones, I wouldn't be surprised if every great champion out there would give us a similar account of his or her journey, let's say being tethered to sacrifice in the form of suffering.
So from that standpoint, because I think you're right, I think there's a component of that in every great, athlete, great business person. Do you recommend training that, putting people in positions to suffer, to struggle as a way to make them better?
I do believe that. I do believe now, once again, because of people like yourself, Dr. Kovacs, we coaches now know more. We are better educated, or certainly have no excuse to not be better educated with resources like yourself in our industry to push them safely. There is such a thing, because you can't, at the expense of one's journey, let's say, I'm going to train you, I'm going to have you do this exercise. I don't care if it hurts your knees. Well, it hurts my knees. Keep doing it. No, that's not a smart path. Okay, because you're once again, we, as to your question, in my position as coaches, as strength coaches, we have to ask ourselves a question in training our athletes. Are we building them up or beating them up? Careful, because it looks the same. If you walk by a gym session and you see somebody working really, really hard, man, that's so good. Hey, attaboy, way to go. No, their coach might be beating him up. It looks inspiring to us. So we now have to take it upon ourselves to learn how to safely take a human body to its maximum levels. Anymore, that's where it is. If you look at every sport now, the sports are changing so much. Jason, in your sport, I've become such a big fan in just learning how power and that next level of athleticism has made its way into your sport. So what does that mean? It means there's more young people. They're going to take that, let's say, inclusion into their day of, okay, let me do some strength training now, because we're seeing it. And once again, the names that are out there that have associated themselves with the power game, that means more people in weight rooms. Sadly, that means more people are going to get injured in weight rooms because they wish to achieve that new weight training, that strength training, let's say physique or potential. I'm one of those that's hypnotized by force equals mass times velocity, or force equals mass times acceleration. That old weightlifter himself, Isaac Newton, or somebody like that, who teaches us that. I'm a believer in that, and I'm inspired by it. But we have to be careful as the stampedes come into the weight rooms now in sport, in golf, in tennis, in any sport. That just lends itself statistically to more injuries. I'm just afraid to say that, but I believe it to be true. There's more injuries now because there's more people who aren't necessarily weightlifters weightlifting now. And that's when people like yourself, Dr. Kovacs, need to keep teaching us that the principle is good, the tenet is good, but there's a greater responsibility now in your choice of exercises, not just the exercises themselves, but the techniques by which those exercises are performed, and how we can know the difference of saying, okay, that's too much. Let's stop you right about there. It's not about exceeding your capabilities every training session. It's about extending them. Even the word implies it. If you exceed your capabilities, because I'm going to push that hard, there's trouble in there somewhere. There's trouble in the weeds for you somewhere if you can insist on exceeding it. If you extend your capabilities on a very progressive, safe trajectory, that's when I truly believe we can and should take our athletes to the next level physically, based only on performance. The theory that if they are stronger and more physically capable, they will then be able to perform their sport better.
And you do that probably better than anyone I've ever seen, from a standpoint of knowing how and when to push someone and understanding there's always more, but it has to be done in the right progressive way. And I think that's where people don't either work them hard enough, so they're not resilient enough for the demands of the sport, which we see a lot, or like you said, they just overwork them and they break them down without being able to build them up. And
yes.
it's a real problem, as you mentioned.
Yes.
You told me a while back about a visit you had. You went out to see Carl Lewis. For folks, I think most people know, probably one of the best track and field athletes of all time. And, both in the sprint events as well as in the long jump. And would you be able to share that story? Because I think there was a lot of learnings there for everyone.
We left there. We went to Houston, Texas at the time. Carl Lewis and Leroy Burrell. They were the first and second fastest humans on Earth in those days. Leroy was the second fastest sprinter on Earth. Carl Lewis was the fastest. And their coach, Tom Tellez, at University of Houston. And we went there to train. Andre had wanted to move better. as I mentioned previously, the game, as he said, is getting bigger. In those days, the young guys, Boris Becker, Yvonne Lendl, these guys were coming to sport. They were pretty big guys. When I say, relatively speaking, for tennis athletes, they were big, strong guys, and they were coming in, obviously, quite successfully. And a guy like me would never be able to kind of conjecture that, would never be able to kind of figure that out. As Andre said, I want to hit the ball bigger. But the harder I hit the ball, the less time I have to get back in position. And that's just how much Andre would break down the sport for me to teach me. He says, so not only do I need to get stronger, but I need to get much quicker. Because if I hit the ball fast up the line and it comes back, I hit myself into trouble because it's coming back so fast that I'm not in position to take the next shot and make the next rally shot and get a good defensive position. So the whole theme for about a month there became quickness, explosiveness, speed. And of course, I felt I pretty much knew it quite thoroughly because of our success at UNLV, and our guys were the Runnin Rebels. Man, they were strong. Man, they could run. Then Andre taught me the difference in it. But wait a minute, my sport, we don't do that. My sport, we went 2 steps, 3 steps, 5 steps, maybe 7 at the most, he says, before I get from ad side to deuce side. And even then, you're not sprinting through it. I have to learn how to start and stop. Start and stop. And he says, I know you want to run me long distances, but if we're going to run that, I get it. I get the aerobic value. I get the good cardiovascular benefits of running long distances, but we don't do that in my sport. We start and stop perhaps 5, 6, 8 times, certainly on clay and hard court. It's very reasonable and feasible. We're going to start and stop 5, 6, 7, 8 times per point. Start and stop. If I run 2 miles, I'm starting once and I'm stopping once. I'm having trouble connecting that to my sport. And he would just leave me speechless and say, wow, that's really, really good. He said, let's just get that. Let's take the next step of movement. Let's learn movement. Let's learn how to move. And let's learn not only the techniques, but literally the strength training methods by which I can be a better mover. So we went to Houston, and Carl Lewis he was a genius, a brilliant, obviously a great athlete in communication. So now you had 2 great communicators, Andre Agassi and Carl Lewis, discussing. And fortunately for me, I was sitting right there with them where I could learn. Why? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? Why won't you do that? Andre, do you know the difference between acceleration and the upright phase of sprinting? Do you know why you do that? I still remember one of the greatest quotes. I always thought you should run the whole time low and running low. And so Andre asked Carl Lewis, he says, so I should stay low the whole time, right, when I'm running? And Carl Lewis says, only if someone is shooting at you. He says, he says, other than that, come out low and then get up. He says, come out low, the acceleration phase. And everything we were just doing, I'm just taking it all in. And I was so wrong about everything. And Andre asks me at one point during our visit there, is he insulting us? I said, Andre, he's been insulting us since we got off the plane. He says, why? And I said, because I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Everything I've had you do in this component of your training development has been wrong. I said, we're staying because he's going to make me a better teacher. You're going to leave Houston with a better training coach, me. And we just looked at each other, and that was kind of the start of it, where he said he appreciated the fact that I wasn't going to guess at him. I was so ready to ask someone, and that's not a bad person to ask. The fastest man on earth is not a bad place to start when you say, what do you do? But then he was the one who kept saying to me, but why are you doing that? Why? And does your athlete understand why you're having him do that? And the truthful answer to that was no. I didn't even know why he was doing it. I just knew that's what was done. I was doing what we say many, many times. Teaching is inspiration, information, and application. Without all 3, we are merely regurgitators of data. We're just regurgitating data. We're passing on what we read so that we consider that teaching. Inspiring them, giving them the information that is accurate and obviously is true, and then application. How does it apply to that particular specific athlete? And our trip to Carl Lewis, of my humiliation, because I was so wrong, led, and I love saying this. A few weeks later, Andre wins Wimbledon, and that was our first Slam championship. That's the truth. A few weeks later, Andre wins Wimbledon, and off we go. We had not won our mantle. In fact, I'm sitting kind of under it right now. Our trophy mantle was empty. Andre had decided only Olympic medals and gold medals would go up in that mantle, and I'm proud to say we have one of each up there and the gold medal. But yeah, it was a weeks after that we changed our training to be more why-oriented, more precise, quit wasting my athletes' time on things that they might be good, but they're not necessary. Is that not time that your athlete could be working on something more productive, more beneficial to his or her particular craft? And that's when our days became precise. And we actually became a really good road team, as they say. Once we got off an airplane, wherever we were, we knew why we were there. We knew how we were going to do everything, the conditions, the draw, the circumstances, everything. Check, check, check. Now let's go to work.
That was the definition, what you described there, of the growth mindset. You were that growth mindset person way before it was defined as understanding. Just because I've done something a certain way doesn't mean I'm not open to learning a better way. And that's what has made you so great at what you do. And also thank you for sharing that, because it is a little humbling to acknowledge, hey, there were things I didn't do well, and I saw the light and ways to do it better. And that's what makes a great coach.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Dr. Kovacs. And Andre would, when Carl Lewis would ask me a particular question, or Coach Tellez, they would ask me questions, and my truthful answer was something that was about to be deemed incorrect. I still remember looking across and seeing Andre just looking at me. And I'll never forget that, because now an extra component of trust was added in our relationship, because now he knew that the why was prevalent now, but that I was going to ask those questions to which I did not know the answer would not be an obstacle for his development, because I would ask and I would find out. And Dr. Kovacs, just a second ago, and I'm sorry to be so long-winded here, you had mentioned also that one more, how you get that one more from each athlete. I'm sitting here in my training facilities right now. In the back corner over there, and this is true, somewhat publicized every now and then, there's a young lady from Australia, and she's #1 in the world, Ash Barty, #1 tennis player in the world. She wrote a quote in that corner that's still up there. She graffitied my wall when she came here to train me. And our premise, what is our battle cry? And it's one more. And in fact, when we're done with this, I'll actually send you the video of it's up there. And she wrote one more. And to this day, it's my understanding, I received communication from a friend of mine in Australia that she had referenced it on one of her blogs, I believe, that Ash Barty had referenced that in an eventful training session in Las Vegas when she took on that one more. How can I effectively, safely, I said, you have to be able to, as they say, live to fight another day. With us, it's, I need to leave you in the position to do one more, always ready to do one more. Therefore, I can't injure you. I can't put my ego ahead of your quest to say, come on, I'm going to work you so hard. No, we have to be so diligent and so vigilant in our efforts that we ask of our athletes. Is it too much? And we better be ready for that. We better be ready to just flip that switch. That's too much. Let's stop right there. And there is such a thing as too much, because now too much, you take too much and transform that into, okay, you left me in a position wanting to do one more. That's how you develop, where you're able to. You never want to say that was one too many. You never want to say, hey, coach, that was too much, because now my shoulder hurts, my knees hurt. So one more is good. Too much is bad. And I'll send you that video. That's pretty cool. Her signature's still up there. And it was many, many years ago. And as I see her now as #1 in the world and see how she achieved that, I take a very, very special sense of pride and connection to that young lady's words. And like I said, as I'm walking around the gym, eating my bologna sandwiches and reading these things on the wall, I'm a pretty happy guy.
That's great. Gil, I got to tell you, I'm going to work with my swing coach tomorrow, and he's going to be so pissed off because everything he says, I'm going to say, why? Why are we doing that? Tell me why. Tell me why one more time. I'm just going to why him to death tomorrow. So you might get a nasty little email coming in your inbox from my swing coach going, what the hell did you do to this boy?
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Jason.
Hey, Gil, we put out some questions on Instagram to some folks to ask what they may have interest in. And one that came back a few times was they want to know what Gil water is. Would you be willing to share what Gil juice or Gil water is?
Now it's safe to do so. When Andre was competing, we just obviously never did. But it's a formulation and a very beautiful, painful story to that of trial and error, with obviously me taking it upon myself to learn energy. I had to just learn energy for an athlete when it's time to go out there and play. As we know in tennis, you don't know, in the Grand Slams anyway, where it's best of 5 sets, you might be out there playing in the hot sun, 2.5 hours. Okay, good job, well done. Or 5.5 hours. You don't know. Okay, and how do you prepare for that? How do you eat for that? How do you, as they say, carb loading? What do you do for that? So I had to learn energy, and then sustainable energy. Then I had to learn, okay, is this just a stimulant or is this an ergogenic? Is this something that my athlete is going to go out there feeling energized, not sluggish, but not going to hit that little drop, right? That rebound, that drop halfway through his match, okay, from the negative rebound, right? From what was a stimulant and maybe not necessarily ergogenic. I had to learn all that for Andre, but specifically for Andre, even the palatability of it. And to answer your question, it was 26 grams of protein. It was 35 grams of carbohydrates. No reason other than that's what worked best for him. We all have been aware now of the 4-to-1, let's say, theory of grams of carbohydrates per grams of protein. But for Andre, that's just kind of what seemed to work the best. But then, of course, minerals, electrolytes, and enzymes. We had to cover that, meaning, of course, somewhere in there where you're going to have your potassiums, of course, and even your calcium, where you're going to have your leucine in there, where you're going to have all the branched chain amino acids. Of what value would they be during a match, if at all? Carbohydrates, is that important to him? So we ended up putting in all 9 branched chain amino acids, 26 grams of protein, and 35 grams of carbohydrates. But now you have to figure a way to make it drinkable, okay? And the horror story was one year at the French Open, Andre was about to play Pete Sampras in the quarters on clay at Roland Garros. And all athletes, they take their hit, right? You don't know when the match is about to finish before you. So you try to judge it, to time it out a little bit. And about an hour before you think you're going to be playing, you go out there and hit, loosen up, get the blood flowing, and let's go. Now you're ready to play. And after that, I would customarily give him his drink. And then this one here, I just said, okay, I gave him a little too much of the wrong mix. And we're heading back into the locker room. Now getting ready for the call. Go out there and, hey, guys, let's go. It's time to go play. And I gave him his drink, and he drinks it, and made him throw up. Oh. My life flashed before my eyes. My life said, he's about to play such a huge match here, and I made him throw up. It was just too thick, too dense, and the way we had not hit the locker room yet before I was thinking, what are the job locations, job opportunities I might be seeking by the end of that day, because I had really messed him up. And it was just, once again, the right intention, the right mix, but it had to be the viscosity, right? The thickness, by how easily can he sip it and drink it? Will he drink some during the match if necessary? So I would make him the extra bottle. So it's 26 grams of protein, 35 grams of carbohydrates, all the essential electrolytes, right? Electrolytes are so important, as you can teach us better than anybody. The electrolytes for the perspiration, and obviously potassium, and hopefully anti-cramp supplementation in there, because they're going to lose so much, not just liquids in the body, but actually the minerals in the body. So that became his good friend, and that served us well for his entire career. He never deviated from it. He depended on it. He believed in it. And as his career changed, meaning more and more years on the tour and a greater understanding of the weather conditions, he would then say to me, a little more, a little less, a little more of this, a little less of that. And it was perfect. That's how great our communications were. He would tell me what he was going to need for that match in particular. And of course, by then I had it all figured out as to how we were going to modify the need for that day. So that was Gil Wattern. It was a good friend to us, believe me. I still tip my head in memory of those formulations.
And I think it's just a great thing from a standpoint of working with your athlete, great example. And then also, I know you well that you kept copious notes. So you kept a training log and all the information was there. So you would make those adjustments on a daily basis based on feedback and conditions and things like that. So that's something I think a lot of coaches really need to do better of, is when they make the adjustments, have a reason why. And you, on every decision, you had a reason why. Just to finish up, because we're running short on time, most people don't actually know, but you're a self-taught engineer and physics professor, and you've got such a skill set to be able to build equipment, and you've got a whole gym right behind you that is all handmade equipment that you've done yourself over many years. And could you just talk a little bit about how that started and sort of where you are now with it?
Well, even as a little boy, we couldn't afford model cars, and model airplanes were big in my day. I don't know if it's still the same thing for young boys, but model cars, those hot rods, and model airplanes and model ships, we could never really afford them. So walking home from school, I saw in the trash can the throwaway of that, which is just those, if you remember, they were the trees on which everything was attached, those little plastic trees. I used to take those home. And I said, I can make something out of this. I know it's just the leftovers, but I can. So I would take a hot little butter knife, hold it to the plastic, and form it and shape it. And I said, you know what? That actually worked pretty well. I took that inclination into my junior high years, taking shop classes, high school, taking shop classes, and learning a little bit, just my way around a shop. Then you take into account an athlete's needs. You can teach us better than anyone arcs and levers. Our athletes, they're arcs and levers. They move certain ways. Gravity itself is going to move one way for the most part. If you take a 10-pound weight and drop it a million times, it's going to drop the same way. It's gravity. But I said, well, wait a minute, but our bodies don't quite succumb to that. We can adjust to it, but we haven't succumbed to that principle only because of arcs and levers. How do you move? If there is a lever in an arc, where's the fulcrum? Where's the extension point? So I would take all those things into account in an athlete's body and say, I wonder if I can put a machine together where now, instead of letting the weight go this way, if it's moving this way and your arms are moving this way, would that align you? Is there something more linear about that? Is there a greater alignment that can help you and protect your shoulders, protect your knees? So that interest, and I guess the lack of a social life, because I had nothing else to do. So I just spent time, even to this day, I spend time in my garage, in my shop, just trying to figure things out that might be a little more congruent with or in sync with an athlete's movements. So I've just kind of taken athletic movement and tried to somehow mechanize it in a way that is say, well, wait a minute, yeah, that's exactly. How about lateral acceleration? Do I have something that might accommodate lateral acceleration? Okay, obviously upright, obviously down. How about forward? How about backwards? So all those things, those principles of curiosity and then wanting to and caring enough to has led me to build there's some pretty cool stuff in here. There's some pretty cool equipment in here. And the athletes, they come in and they like it. Like I said, we've had the soccer players, professional soccer players, when they come in and say, man, this is perfect for soccer. I say, beautiful, good. Then the baseball guys say, man, this is perfect for baseball. Our track guys, our tennis players, man, this is perfect for us. So that lets me know that I'm understanding the need of the athlete. I'm not asking them to conform to me. I'm willing to put in the time to conform to their needs specifically and have them see that we're not only wishing to enhance their careers, we're wishing to extend their careers as well. There's too many, as we know, there's too many athletes out there, either college level or the professional level, in street clothes. And I know the owners of professional teams don't like the sight of their millions of dollars sitting on the bench in street clothes. The injuries are they're too prevalent in all of our sports these days. And I'm a big believer that you can go a long way to preventing injuries. There are some injuries that I truly believe are preventable if we just kind of give the athlete, let's say, a better shot at it, a better shake when it comes to how we ask him to train.
And same to the fan, right? The fan would love to watch their guy for 20 years, not for 5, right? They want to watch them continue to go and tell their stories about their great because this guy did this and this. Yeah, so that's right. It's awesome for the fan to watch an athlete go a long time.
Yep, I agree.
Hey, Gil, thank you so much for your time. This has been outstanding. It's been one of the best hours of my life, and I'm hopefully people listening feel the same way. So I look forward to seeing you out in Las Vegas sometime soon as well. And and this was a real treat.
Well, such an inspiration, Gil. Such an inspiration.